Welcome to Nole Edge, the official podcast of the College of Arts and Sciences at Florida State University. I'm your host, Amy Walden, the Assistant Director for Visual and Social Media with the College of Arts and Sciences, and today we welcome members of the class of 2002 to see what these Seminoles have been up to over the last 20 years. First, I'm joined in the studio by Dazi Lenoir, an Orlando-based lawyer and two-time Florida State alumna who was named chair of the FSU Alumni Association's Board of Directors in July of 2022. Dazi, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Dazi earned her BA in English Literature with a concentration in business in 2002, before going on to earn her master's in sports administration in 2003 and her Juris Doctor from the Florida Coastal School of Law in 2012. So Dazi, before we dive into what you've been up to since graduation, can you tell us why you wanted to attend FSU and what your college journey was like?
I came to FSU after I had a conversation with first of all, it was a coach from my school. He was a kicker here some years ago, and he had all these great things to say about Florida State. Coach Ozzie All. Hi, Coach All. He's at our opposing high school now, so that's a point of contention, but we still love you. And then a friend of mine that I cheered with in South Carolina, who was a year ahead of me, had come to Florida State. I'm from a very small town. Well, not too small. It's one of the largest in the state of South Carolina, if that means anything. But I'm from Rock Hill, and I really didn't want to stay in South Carolina. I applied to FSU, and I applied to University of South Carolina, our Carolina, in Columbia. So had I not been a Seminole, I would have been a Gamecock. All my friends went to USC, they went to Clemson, they went to College of Charleston, and I really wanted a different experience that didn't involve me kind of maybe like recreating high school a bit. Mm-hmm. And our hometown was big on football. The state of South Carolina was big on football. We've produced a lot of NFL players from our area, which is interesting because our town is so small. However, I didn't know who Coach Bowden was when I first came. And Coach All was like, have you been living under a rock? Like, what's going on? But I wanted to go somewhere that was warmer. Seems superficial. I wanted to go out of state, so I wanted to be away. And I wanted to go somewhere that had a good football team. And of course, FSU had my major, which of course should have been most important. But at the end of the day, I applied to both. I got early admission to Carolina, and I waited to see if I was going to get into Florida State. So, April came around. I had not gotten an acceptance letter. And at the time, my grandmother, my great aunt ran a daycare in our town. And I would go over there after school sometimes when I didn't have activities and help. And my grandpa wrote up, he said, "You got a letter from Florida State." And I said, "Did you bring it?" And he goes, "No." Longest 15-minute drive of my life.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
To get home to open this letter. And when I got it, it was a very small, normal-sized envelope, and my heart sank, and I said, I didn't get in. I'm forced to go to Columbia. And I opened it, and the first word was congratulations with an exclamation point. And I said, thank God I can leave. And at that point, I think I started packing from July up until the point where I left in August of 1998 before I came to Tallahassee. My first visit here, I didn't do a college visit. My first visit to Tallahassee was orientation. My dad worked for the airline, so he couldn't come the first day. So he put me on a plane. He gave me some money and told me to take a cab, because they didn't have Uber and Lyft, from the airport to the student union. And I got dropped off by the taxi in the student union and went and signed myself in and got a name tag. And I think I spent the night in Landis. And the next day he came down and went to the parent meeting, and I registered for classes at some airport restaurant, and that was kind of how all she wrote. So it's not the most glamorous story, but that's kind of how I got here.
That's an amazing story. I absolutely love it. Since your time at FSU, you've had an illustrious law career, including as a founding and managing partner of Lyons Legal LLC and settling your first $1 million case at Parks and Crump Law Firm here in Tallahassee. Can you talk a little about your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
My professional career has been a journey, if you will. I started in sports, and I had the privilege of working in Indianapolis for Pacer Sports and Entertainment, so in the NBA, which was pretty neat coming out of my master's program. I then went into pharmaceutical sales. So I sold medications for almost 5 years, which was really helpful with personal injury because I knew how to read medical records. I had learned a lot about anatomy and physiology from I sold hypertensive medicine as well as anxiety and depression. So I learned about the brain and the heart and different things. So when I started reading these records for these clients, it wasn't as overwhelming as it might have been for someone who wasn't as familiar with the medical terminology and so forth. So the matriculation, it all kind of came together, if you will. But I actually worked for Parks and Crump, or Ben Crump and Darryl Parks, as their receptionist when I was a grad student. And that was in the fall of 2002. And literally 10 years to the date, they let me come back as a lawyer.
Oh my gosh,
so
amazing.
when I finished my taking the bar and all of that, I called Attorney Crump and I was like, hey, do you know anybody's hiring in Jacksonville? I just finished school, I need a job. And he's like, oh, let me look around. So he made some calls and he called me back. He's like, Daz, I don't have anything, but we are probably going to be taking some new associates. Would you be interested in coming back to Tallahassee? I'm like, I'm interested in working. What do you have? So they actually interviewed me, which I was kind of surprised by, because I'm like, I worked for y'all before. Are you really? So they put me through a full-fledged interview and they ended up giving me an offer. And this was at the time where they were in the height of Trayvon's case. So he passed in February of 12, and I came back in August of 12. And so they were traveling, and I kind of knew where they were based on what interview they were doing, like where they were in the country or the world. So as a brand new lawyer, my first case was a death case where a kid died on 95 down in Brevard County after being served alcohol underage at a bar. It was Christmas Eve that it happened, and he ended up passing away a couple of days, later. And I remember Attorney Crump telling me to go set up an estate. And I said, for what? I mean, I'm thinking estate probate, this is a wrongful death claim, a dram shop act. Why are you even talking about this? And he said, go get a pad, go get a pen, and don't ever come back again without one. I said, no problem. So I went and hurried and got my pad and pen and came back, and he began to explain to me why I needed an estate, because the person was now deceased and we needed someone to stand in the place or in the shoes of the person who had passed so that somebody could bring a claim, and we needed letters of administration, and that's why you needed the estate. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had a lot of latitude with them to learn a lot more than some of maybe my classmates did, because their rule was trial by fire, go do it, just don't mess it up. So that was a lot of pressure. Yeah. And I remember drafting that lawsuit and going, you need to read this. And he's like, I'm sure it's fine. I was like, no. You need to read this before we file this. So I learned a tremendous amount. I appreciate them so much for the opportunity that they gave me to learn and to kind of grow, which, transitioned to, owning your own practice, which my husband manages on his own now. I don't even practice full time now, but I'm licensed still here in Florida and Georgia. I took 2 bar exams, and I'll always be a licensed attorney. But they were amazing. I really give them credit. Ben, Darryl, and Attorney Bob Cox, who was a mentor that stood in their stead when they were out, fighting the good fight of justice, who went to all my first hearings with me and all my first depositions. I'm not going without somebody. He's like, Dazi, you can do this now. And I was like, you need to come and go. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience with cases that you just really couldn't draft in a law school exam. It was just a really neat place to work. So credit to them, and congratulations to Attorney Crump for the naming of the new law school in his name. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. When you were appointed as chair of the FSU Alumni Association board, you became the first Black woman to hold the position. What does that mean to you?
I was really just very grateful. I thank God for the opportunities that have been placed before me. At the time, I took a step back, and I really didn't digest it as well as I should have when my grandmother was living, but she was actually a pharmacist, and she got her PharmD from Xavier University, it's HBCU in New Orleans back in the 50s, and had to travel, 2.5 hours away to go to work. She worked for Eckerd, because she didn't have opportunities that were presented to her in a close proximity and so forth. And she instilled a tremendous amount in me. So at the time, I was just really grateful for the chance. I'm grateful that my colleagues didn't deem it robbery for me to serve in this capacity, and just really wanted to do a good job. So, I could hear her saying, you need to, do the very best you can, don't make any excuses and so forth and so on. So I'm just hoping that, when this term is over, I've left the association in a better posture than it was when I started. And to a degree, I feel like we have. I feel like we have one of the most diverse boards on campus. When I started in 2017, there were only 5 other African-American members, and I was the only female. And now that's not the dynamic of our board now. So we're just really grateful for the progress that we've made, and intend to continue to work towards diversity and inclusion, so that all members of our alumni base feel, like they have a home at the Alumni Association.
It's wonderful. You stayed very connected to FSU since graduating, not only in your role as chair of the Alumni Association Board, but with the FSU Black Alumni Network, the Seminole Club of Greater Orlando, and your role in the President's Search Committee. Why is it so important to you to stay connected to FSU?
I think that folks or students who are involved as students have a tendency to want to be more connected as they graduate. And FSU had meant so much to me as a student. I mean, I met friends that are like family to me, staff that are still, hold very near and dear to my heart. And I really, again, felt like I came into my own here, and am just glad I can give back in any small amount, but it's been a much greater capacity than I ever imagined would happen. So FSU is just a great place. I mean, I guess it's, maybe a complicated answer, but maybe it's really not. Like, I just love the university. Sometimes my friends are like, do you get paid for that? I'm like, no. And they're like, really? I'm like, no, I just do it because I love it, and you need to join the Alumni Association. So it just an opportunity to give back just a little of what was given to me as I, matriculated through my undergraduate and graduate program. So yeah, I'm just grateful.
That's terrific. What advice would you give to current FSU students about their college journeys?
I would say enjoy the process. Take advantage of whatever opportunities are available. I was able to study abroad when I was here. I never missed a football game. Not that should be, top of your list. I went to 3 bowl games, 3 national championships. Like, I was involved in a whole host of things. It was just a really great 5 years of my life. And I wouldn't rush it. I know everybody's in such a rush to become an adult and be independent. The bills and the mortgages will all be there. Enjoy it while you're here. Don't drag it out 6-7 years so your parents have an extra bill. But enjoy your 4 years. Be involved in as much as you can, and take advantage of all the opportunities that exist here. And I'm sure in the 20 years that I've been gone, there are a whole lot more opportunities available for students. So just take full advantage. And when they come, go. I try to tell my niece, who's just insistent on staying in New York. I'm like, you're 20. I think she's 22 now. I'm like, if you leave, you can always come back. Just go and have a new experience. If there's a job somewhere else, go take the job. If you hate the area, it's okay. You don't have to stay there. But having the opportunities, I think are really important.
So, Dazi, we end every podcast with our bowl of mystery questions.
Oh, boy.
So please draw a question and answer.
Name one thing you are afraid of. I hate snakes.
I think I'm with you on that.
I'm definitely afraid of snakes. And I had one in my yard a few months ago, and I flagged my neighbor down from across the street and said, are you afraid of snakes? Can you please come? And it wasn't even that big, but I was like, no, I can't do this. So I am definitely afraid.
Oh, gosh.
Of
yeah.
snakes.
In Florida, we have to deal with that, unfortunately, sometimes.
Yes.
But. All right, Dazi, thank you so much for joining us today on Nole Edge. And if you would like to learn more about today's guests and the FSU Alumni Association, visit alumni.fsu.edu. Thanks for tuning in.